Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the July 11th meeting of the Public Infrastructure Committee. My name is Tony Emerson. I represent District 4, and I have the honor of chairing the committee this year. If the other members would please introduce themselves.
Michelle Hofer, District 6. District 9.
Neil Dobler. Yeah. Neil Dobler, District 7.
Great, and our deputy mayor. So, well, the first item will be to approve the minutes from the May 16th meeting. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's approved. Third item on our agenda is the 2024 CIP project approvals. Mr. Copley, I guess.
Certainly. Good morning, everyone. As part of the adoption of the 2024 CIP, there is now a requirement that before we go out to bid on any project with a cost anticipated to be greater than $250,000, that we need to get the approval of the Public Infrastructure Committee and the City Council. And so our very first two projects following this process are the Kansas and Gordon intersection improvements, which includes a raised speed table at the intersection of North Kansas and Northeast Gordon. That we have a anticipated project budget of $450,000, and that this will be funded out of ARPA and federal funds exchange. The second project that we have is adding an additional left-bound turn lane on the South Topeka Boulevard at 45th Street. Currently, we have a tremendous amount of congestion in there, and we're going to make improvements by changing the geometry, slightly widening that road so we can put an additional left turn lane. Again, we have an estimated project cost of $400,000, and this will also be funded out of the ARPA funds. And gladly stand for any questions about either of these projects.
Thank you, Mr. Copley. Any questions on these projects? I just had one question about I support both of these, but had a question specifically on the 45th Street. You said additional left turn lane, Mr. Copley. Is that what you're actually going to do? At one time, I thought it was lengthening that existing left turn lane, but now so it'll be two?
Yes, sir. It will be dual left turn lanes from southbound Topeka Boulevard onto 45th Street. So this will allow us to increase the capacity substantially for what we have currently.
I think that would be fantastic. There's no left turn from the other direction, so there won't be the issues like out at 21st and Wanamaker where sometimes you're kind of head on with people. So I think that'll be fantastic. And the 5,000 or 6,000 of my constituents who use 45th every day would love that. So I appreciate your work, and I'm full support of that. Do I have a motion on these?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes 3-0. We'll send that on to the full council.
Correct, and I think we're targeting the August 18th date for introducing these items to the City Council.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Copley. The next item is the JADO project list.
Correct.
Director Copley, I guess that's you as well.
Yes, so at the last PI committee meeting that we had in June, we briefly touched upon this list, and I was asked to provide my recommendations in terms of the new priority, as well as to provide some additional information for the committee members' consideration relative to the current PCI ratings of these streets, as well as if we had any high-level utility cost estimates. And so that information has been added to the table. Real briefly, the 17th Street project, as we have discussed in the past, we are pushing that back approximately 5 years to allow for the full lifespan of the existing mill and overlay that was done approximately 5 years ago. And we are moving up the Topeka Boulevard project 15th to 21st. So those two were previously rated 4 and 6, and those are flip-flopping. And then the other change that we're making in priority is we are pushing back 29th Street from Wanamaker to Shunga. That showed as a PCI of 72. That stretch of road was mill and overlaid this year. Once we do a mill and overlay, we reset the PCI to 90. Estimated useful life of that project will be approximately 10 years, so our recommendation is to push that one back as well, which then allows us to move up slightly 37th from Burlingame to Scapa, and the 17th Street, Washburn to Adams, to basically just move those up slightly. The 37th Burlingame to Scapa, that does show as a PCI of 75. We think that that is overstated. We've had staff out there physically to inspect, and we think that that is a little optimistic, and so we believe that there is a legitimate need to move this one up a little bit, and certainly by pushing 29th back, now that we have a new mill and overlay, that gives us the flexibility to do that. So those are our recommended changes in the priority. We're meeting the committee. JADO Finance Committee is comprised of the public works directors from city and county, as well as the finance directors from the city and county. And we're meeting next week, and then we will be getting this report out to all the JADO members, along with the county list of projects as well. And with that, I'll gladly stand for any questions.
I don't have a question, but I support this, and I really appreciate, Mr. Coppa, that you and your staff, instead of being wedded to, hey, this is what we said, I really appreciate the fact that you guys are actually going out and putting boots on the ground and looking at what actually needs done, because the number of times we get calls that, hey, they just fixed this street that was better condition than my street and didn't touch ours. I think that's just a great thing that you guys are doing, so I really appreciate that. Any questions, Deputy Mayor? Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
When you say you're going to move back 29th Street, it's showing up in 2027. I assume that's for, hold it. Yeah, 2027. Is that going to move back further, or is that the actual time? That's on, the 29th that they just mill and overlaid.
We'll take a look at that. Obviously, I would expect a new mill and overlay to give us 10 years of service life, so we would have the ability to
Push it back
to
further.
push that back.
Okay, and when you said 17th might move up a little bit, and 37th moved up, would those changes be noted on here before it goes to the JADO meeting?
Certainly, we can take a look at that in terms of where we need to adjust the upper portion of the table in terms of project timing.
Because you told me 17th had about 5 years left.
That's the 17th Street between I-470 and McVicker.
And right now it's showing up, I got that the right line, yeah. It's showing up in 2030, which is more than 5 years. That's why I'm asking. So I'm guessing we still need to adjust years a little bit.
Yeah, we'll take a hard look at that at the top part of the chart.
Okay. That's it. Thank you, Braxton.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I do have,
Yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead, Deputy Mayor.
thanks. Braxton, the chart, and I need to switch back, so pardon me. At the top of your chart, projected revenues by year of 6 million in 2023 and going up. Is that the city's half of the infrastructure portion of the half-cent sales tax?
Yes, sir. That's the city's portion.
Okay. So you're projecting a deficit in 2031 of $13 million at this point. Presumably the projects then that are pushed out to 2030, certainly 2030, and maybe a little bit, or certainly in 2031 and maybe a little bit 2030. Those projects are at risk at this point. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. There are a couple of different options that the governing body is going to have, and those those projections are based upon our adjusted construction costs based on full scope of project and current costs, and then we've adjusted those for inflation as well. So one option that would be available to the governing body would be to eliminate those out-year projects. Another would be to take a look at the scope of the projects to reduce scope to be able to fit them in within the projected revenue that the city will receive. And obviously, all of these revenue projections are predicated on the current level of sales tax. And if the legislature were to eliminate the sales tax on food, then that would substantially change what these revenue projections are. And again, these revenue projections are the sort of middle of the road. We came up with, the finance department did a great job of modeling and came up with a worst case scenario, absolute best case scenario, and then a sort of middle of the road. So certainly there are options available to the governing body. This is just the starting point of the conversation in terms of having those project budgets at full scope, not including utilities, and based on a middle of the road sales tax projection.
Thank you. And I think zeroing in on your comment of looking at the scope, and I think you referred to the projects at the end to see if we can fit them in. I would assume that would also include looking at the scope of every project from here on to see if we need to do exactly what was originally anticipated. We could essentially reduce scope on all of the projects going forward and perhaps be able to fit in more projects than we've got currently shown. So I think that's something I'll be pushing as we discuss it in September or whenever the JADO meeting is. I think it's probably a community question at this point. Which of these projects make the most sense? And does the original scope that was intended for all of those projects that have not yet been built still make sense? So thank you, Braxton.
Agreed 100%. And certainly, as I had mentioned to the council during the consideration of the CIP, the first of these will be the Huntoon project. And once we get a consultant on board to start the engagement, we can look at options and then come back to the governing body as part of that early design and say, these are the options that we have in terms of full scope or something of a slightly reduced scope.
All right, thank you, Mr. Copley. I do not believe there's any action to take on this item.
That is correct. This is for informational purpose.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that. Next item is the Auburn Road project and our agreement, a cost share agreement we have with the county. I guess Mr. Copley, you're on again.
That would be me again. So as 2 months ago, I had a real brief presentation to the governing body. And questions came up about annexation, and that was researched and the information provided to the committee members. Basically, the county is currently in design to do a $5.5 million project to improve Auburn Road from K4 Highway down to 29th Street. And that is to improve it to a urban profile 3-lane road with sidewalk on one side, 10-foot wide shared use path on the other, with curb, gutter, and storm. That also includes, as part of that $5.5 million, that also includes the improvement of the intersection of 29th and Auburn Road with a roundabout. And this is all to provide for additional traffic that is modeled and expected with growth of that area, as well as the construction of the Washburn Rural Middle School. The county has made the ask to the city of Topeka for the city to partner and share in the project costs to the tune of $1 million. We have had the engineer for the consultant take a look at what that would mean to the city of Topeka. The $1 million would cover the cost of the existing removal and replacement of the existing share of the pavement that is now the city's responsibility because we annexed to the center line of the road. Because it would be the removal and replacement of existing pavement that allows us to pay for it out of the citywide half-cent sales tax. And obviously, as we've discussed before, there was a surplus that had been built up in there. So that would be the intent, would be to fund the city's portion of this out of citywide half-cent sales tax and not have to bond this portion of the costs. Lastly, we have, legal has prepared a document, a contract between the city and the county that would specify the city's share, as well as to make it clear that the costs are to be no greater than $1 million. And the caveat, of course, is that it needs to pay for replacement of the existing so that we fall within the parameters of the citywide half-cent sales tax. And with that, I would gladly stand for any questions, and I would respectfully ask for a motion to approve the amendment to the CIP, the resolutions attached.
All right, any questions for Mr. Copley on this, Deputy Mayor?
I do have not really a question, just a comment. As you look at the aerial that shows this, first of all, I'm in support of the project. However, I will note that that stretch from 29th to whatever it is, K4, I guess, the west side's in the county, so they're not going to be paying city property tax. The east side is tax exempt. I'm going to suggest to whoever needs to take a look at it, there's certainly property on the west side of Auburn Road. It looks like there's property on the north of the site that we're talking about, all adjacent to the city limits. So I think it's going to be fairly easy to annex those areas, and I would suggest we start that process fairly quickly. Thank you.
I concur, Deputy Mayor. Over any questions?
Neil, how much are you talking about on annexing from K4 to 29th, just the section west of Auburn, or Garish? No, it is Auburn. Or going further north?
Well, I think we need to look at any property that touches the city limits right now. Obviously, if it's developed, you have some constraints about having to provide service, and that may not be feasible at this point in time. Areas that are not developed, I think we certainly need to look at annexation. So when they do start developing, they
We're ready.
come into the city. I mean, if you look at what stymies us as a city, and when we look at growth right now and you look at the city limits, we run up to against the 3-acre tracts, the 5-acre tracts, and that effectively stops growth because we're not going to redevelop those areas. These happen to be some pretty wide open areas. I realize there's a house or two in there, but areas that seem ripe for growth, and we need to take advantage of that.
Okay.
All right, and Mr. Copley, I guess you do need us to recommend this to the full council, correct?
Yes, sir. There is a resolution that is attached as part of the packet.
Fantastic. Well, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion by the Deputy Mayor. Do I have a second?
I've got a second. Do we also have to move the agreement also, or is that?
No, the contract, the city manager would have the authority to execute the contract once the city council has approved this amendment to the CIP to authorize this project.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. All in favor of doing so, say aye.
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 Okay, that passes 3-0. Next item is the firm memo regarding the fire station. Chief Phillips, I guess.
Yes, for some time, we've been experiencing issues with our fire station alerting and paging system. This is a system of how our stations across the city are connected to the dispatch center and receive emergency calls. And working with facilities, fire department staff has determined that we have a serious issue as this is a mission-critical piece of infrastructure with the age and condition of a number of the speakers in the different facilities, as well as the wiring. It's outdated. There's been temporary patches and repairs made over the years, and it's just gotten to a point that we need to look wholeheartedly as a whole piece replacement. In working with facilities personnel, we were able to move around some other firm projects that were slated for the fire department over the next couple of years and prioritize this project, move it up in the order, and push some others off. And with that, we're asking for approval of this to move forward.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. My only question would be, I see in here you have design. First of all, I have no issue with this. I think it's important to do. I did have a question, though. What design will be involved?
We need to put this out to bid because of the dollar amount, and so it would be a matter of having a consultant put the plans together so that the contractors will have a document to bid for. So, and because it's over $100,000, that means that we need to put out a full project manual. Under our purchasing rules, anything under $100,000 could be done on an informal bid, but anything over $100,000 will need to have a project manual. So we've got an existing contract, and so we've got our consultant working on the design right now to be able to get this out to bid. As Chief indicated, this is mission critical. We'd like to get it out on the street in the as soon as possible after we get council approval, of course, to amend the firm to be able to do this.
Okay. Thank you, Director Copley. Any questions from the other members?
No.
Okay, well, in that case, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, we have a
Second.
motion and then a second by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor, say
Second.
aye.
Aye.
Okay, none opposed, so that also passes 3-0. And our last item, at least our last scheduled item, is utilities update regarding the North Topeka wastewater treatment plant nutrient removal project. And I see Ms. Davis. Looks like she's going to be presenting on this.
Yep, I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on our CMAR project. The governing body has heard about this a couple times over the last few years. We started looking at this closely in 2020. We know KDHE is kind enough to give us goals in our permits. So when we are looking at new regulatory goals that we are trying to hit, they give us a target to shoot for so that we can attempt to hit them through operational changes, things like that we can tweak. Came pretty close to hitting some of these, but the final goals that they put into our newest permits were lower than we anticipated, and we needed to do some upgrades to the plant to meet those goals. We proposed to the governing body and through CIP process a new approach to doing this work. The construction manager at risk was an attempt to meet an agreement with KDHE to get this work done by an agreed to date of December 2023 so that we could put that infrastructure to test and hope to meet those goals and show that we've met those goals by the end of 2024. So those dates are written into our permits. The construction manager at risk was approved. We have entered into contract with Garney Construction, and the way that process works is we have a contract with them. The initial contract was $180,000 to do pre-construction work. They have worked with our design engineers. That was a team of Black & Veatch and Bartlett & West who did the facility plan and some preliminary design work for us in 2020. Since Garney has come on, they have had one amendment for our first GMP, a guaranteed maximum price to procure some equipment up front. That helps us stay on track, push this through as quickly as we can, so it's not a traditional design, then bid, and then build. Now we're up for our second guaranteed maximum price, which is our final. That is $11.8 million. That will wrap us up. That will get them to the end. Any overages are their responsibility through this process, which is a nice feature of the CMAR process. And so far, everything's going well. We may be pushing that timeline, that first timeline of construction at the December 31st, 2023 date a little, but we have a great relationship with KDHE, and we will be updating them as we get a little closer, seeing where we're at that point. So just wanted to give you guys an update since this isn't a traditional project. It doesn't run like a normal construction project would. We wanted to let you guys know where we stood with that, where those expenditures are. We are under budget. The original budget has been, our estimated project budget was $17 million, so just over that.
Any questions for Ms. Davis on this?
I'm curious, how are we doing on equipment procurement? Are they doing
That-
okay lead-wise?
Yes, actually, being able to do the first GMP helped significantly. So through this process, Garney was able to, they go through a very similar process that we would do if we were procuring equipment. They go out for bids, they look for the lowest price, do these meet standards. They work with those providers and then ask the city, do you approve this? We say, yep, that looks great. And we were able to do all of that so that it could be well on its way as they were wrapping up design. So we were able to engage Garney, the contractor, while we were still in design, if that makes sense. So the biggest pieces, the biggest components that had the longest lead times, we were able to settle on those and get those coming while we wrapped up that. So it's been hugely helpful to keep us going and moving.
I know it'd been a problem with, say, 12th Street construction, getting some of those pieces.
Yep.
So I didn't know if this was, if lead times are getting any shorter, or if we're just getting better at planning.
We're looking at significantly different types of equipment for this project. We of course, there's always a little bit of extension here, which is why we may be pushing that 2023 deadline a little bit. But we're talking about submersible mixers and bigger pumps. We're not necessarily talking about valves and piping like we would be on 12th Street, if that helps. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just say, and maybe this is self-serving for me to say this, but, you know, my company's done about 7 of these, none of these with the city, by the way, but with the county, with a couple other smaller towns in Kansas, and I think 5 of the 6 have been done under budget and within the time. So these really leverage the experience of the whole project team, the engineers and the contractors get together, and there's just a lot of give and take, and the contractor might say this, if we could do it this way, we could save money or accelerate the schedule. So I'm convinced that this is a better way in complex jobs. If it's just a subdivision or something, or just a line replacement, it's not necessary. But I think it's a great thing you guys are doing. I think it's what you save now. You'll save $3 to $4 million or dollars over what we estimated. So
Yep.
That's fantastic. Great work by you and your staff.
Yeah, thank you. It has been great, and the collaboration is even better. I think it really helps getting the operations staff involved with the contractor and the design groups up front, so folks aren't asking on the back end, why did we look at this? This doesn't make sense on the back end, so you're redesigning those things that come up.
Absolutely, I agree. And I know Mr. Copley was also a big part of this when you were
Absolutely,
at
yep.
utilities, so great work there also as well. And I guess there's no action on that. You just wanted to give us an update.
Yes.
And I guess I would ask Ms. Davis that maybe you share this with the whole council as well.
Yes.
I mean, usually when we have you guys up there, it's because you guys want a rate increase or something's gone wrong. So it's good to have some good news.
Good, we can do that.
Okay, are there any other items? City manager? Members of the committee? I don't see the deputy mayor did tell me he had to be off at 11:30. He had another meeting. So looks like he's gone now. Well, having nothing else, we're hereby adjourned. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
There's so many spots, no way will they all be needed.
The Americans with Disabilities Act requires that a percentage of total parking spaces in a lot or a garage be ADA accessible. I can guarantee there are plenty of spots for you. I need this spot to go out and be independent, so please save the spot for those who need it.
I'll only be a few minutes, no one will need this spot.
In the few minutes that it takes you to go into the building, I might be pulling up and want to go inside too. But without this spot, I can't get out of my van. We both deserve equal access.
My grandma isn't using it, so someone should.
Did you know that misusing someone's placard can result in a misdemeanor or a fine? Plus, it's just plain wrong to use these spots